At 3 o'clock and 12 minutes, on the 4th of October, 1957, the world changed. This point in time forever marked a transition from old to new, and the world would never be the same, scientifically, politically, or socially. Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, was launched into orbit in the Earth's upper atmosphere. Although just the size of a beach ball, and weighing only 184 pounds, Sputnik marked a major turning point in civil defense within the United States. This satellite created a profound effect that still resonates to this day. The Trinity test in 1945 triggered the nuclear age, but U.S. nuclear civil defense did not begin until August 29, 1949, with the first Soviet test of an atomic weapon. When President Truman announced the Soviet detonation, the U.S. knew it had lost its monopoly on nuclear weapons. Thus, it had to prepare for the possibility that nuclear bombs could be dropped on the home front.
When I was a little kid, I grew up in Granville. My dad was a builder. He built every house that we lived. He would build a house, and then we would simply move and move and move. And every house that he built with a bomb shelter.
On October 5th, 9 days after the announcement by President Truman, the National Security Resources Board sent out a series of civil defense planning advisory bulletins to all state governors. This bulletin set forth the federal government's plans and gave recommendations for state action. President Truman signed the Federal Civil Defense Act of 1950. Truman said of the act,
"The Federal Civil Defense Act of 1950, which I have signed today, is designed to protect life and property in the United States in case of enemy assault. It affords the basic framework for preparations to minimize the effects of an attack on our civilian population and to deal with the immediate emergency conditions which such an attack would create."
With this act, the new Federal Civil Defense Administration began to educate the public. It produced many movies and pamphlets to provide the public with information about nuclear weapons and what to do in the event of an attack. The most famous of these is Duck and Cover, a film featuring Bert the Turtle and a catchy tune telling people to duck and cover. Other civil defense films, such as Let's Face It, Atomic Alert, and Our Cities, dealt with where to find shelter and what to do in the event of an attack. The Distant Early Warning System was being constructed during the Eisenhower administration. It was a joint venture between the U.S. and Canada to detect Soviet bombers flying over the Arctic. The DEW Line was a series of radar towers ranging from Greenland to Alaska, forming an artificial fence between the Soviets and the U.S. This fence was designed to detect any foreign bombers who were trying to attack the U.S. by navigating over the Arctic. Until Sputnik, the DEW Line provided the U.S. Air Force with 6-hour warning before a Soviet attack, and boosted the public's confidence in their ability to safely evacuate. As early as 1950, the year after the Soviets detonated their first atomic bomb, Americans began constructing home fallout shelters to withstand an attack on the U.S. As the 1950s progressed, more and more homes began to have basement corners stocked with canned food and water ready at any time for Soviet attack.
I remember that when I was a little kid, one of the way I got my allowance is my mom would come home from the store, and most of our vegetables and stuff came in cans. I would take those down, put them in a box, go downstairs, and I would take, ravioli on, ravioli off, green beans on, green beans off, and then I would take those upstairs and put them in the pantry upstairs. I didn't know it, but I was rotating stock. So that if there was a nuclear attack, we would have fresh canned food.
In the Soviet Union, some emphasis was placed on civil defense. Since about 1954, the USSR had been developing the concept of urban evacuation. By 1956, Soviet civil defense publications noted that civil defense units should be stationed outside of cities to ensure post-attack capability to retaliate. Between 1957 and 1958, Soviet leadership rejected plans to build deep-level air raid shelters for the urban population. During the 1950s, the Eisenhower administration followed a policy of brinksmanship. This policy created the impression that the U.S. would use the most extreme methods to pursue its national interests. With bombers, the Eisenhower administration could press an issue to the farthest extremes without actually committing. Bombers sent to frighten opposing forces could be called back with ease after these forces stood down. On the 29th of July, 1955, James C. Haggerty, President Eisenhower's press secretary, announced that the United States would be launching small Earth-circling satellites as participation in the International Geophysical Year, a year dedicated to the furthering of scientific research. In a press conference the same day, Leonid Sedov, a Soviet official, said,
"In my opinion, it will be possible to launch an artificial Earth satellite within the next 2 years."
Sputnik, launched on the first generation of intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, was a great Soviet achievement and a major turning point in American civil defense. Sputnik was launched on the multi-stage R-7 rocket. Through various stages of afterburners and rockets, a nuclear warhead could be sent into the upper atmosphere without American knowledge. After the successful launch of an ICBM, the Soviet news agency TASS reported, "The solution of the problem of creating intercontinental ballistic missiles will make it possible to reach remote regions without resorting to strategic aviation, which at present time is vulnerable to the modern means of anti-aircraft defense." Using an ICBM, a thermonuclear warhead can be dropped on any city in North America. With the advent of the ICBM, bombers no longer were the mode through which a warhead would be delivered. This increased international tension, and the policy of brinksmanship was no longer feasible in an international conflict, because the risk of nuclear attack was too great and the threat of mutually assured destruction too realistic. For most Americans, Sputnik was the wake-up call to the reality of nuclear warfare. They were fully aware that the ever-continuous beeping was a harbinger of potential nuclear apocalypse, a beeping which Americans could hear with their own ears. While most Americans woke up, President Eisenhower simply dismissed the Soviet satellite as little more than a beach ball with antenna. After Sputnik's launch, the distant early warning system was unable to detect the new threat of a missile attack from the Soviet Union. Thus, the Ballistic Missile Early Warning System, or BMEWS, was developed. With the BMEWS, ICBMs could be detected, but the warning time was decreased. When Soviet planes had been used to fly over the Arctic, the DEW line was able to provide 6 hours advanced warning. With the ICBM, the advanced warning was reduced to 15 minutes. With the 6-hour advanced warning the DEW line had provided, the Air Force was able to scramble intercept planes, and civil defense measures could be effectively implemented. But with a reduction in warning time, little could be done in 15 minutes. Senate Majority Leader Lyndon Johnson's aide, George E. Reedy, stated in a press conference,
"The simple fact is that we can no longer consider the Russians to be behind us in technology. It took them 4 years to catch up to our atomic bomb and 9 months to catch up to our hydrogen bomb. Now we are trying to catch up to their satellite."
In order to catch up to Sputnik, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, was created. Shortly after DARPA was created, it started Project Defender, the Ballistic Missile Defense Program. Under this project, an electronically steered array radar space surveillance system was developed to detect and track ICBMs. DARPA also helped develop the Over-the-Horizon Radar to detect ICBMs. Also as a result of Sputnik, Eisenhower introduced and Congress passed the Reorganization Plan No. 1 of 1958. Eisenhower then took executive action, delegating and transferring certain functions and affairs to the Office of Defense and Civilian Mobilization, later the Office of Civil and Defense Mobilization. Even today, the effects of Sputnik and the ICBM remain. The threat of nuclear war did not end with the Cold War, and the delivery system used to launch Sputnik is still a threat. North Korea's tests of ICBM technology over the past few years have worried many nations, including the United States, and have even created hysteria and anxiety similar to the Sputnik crisis in 1957. Japan, and especially South Korea, are all taking steps to increase civil defense in the event of an armed missile launch by the North Koreans, just as the United States had prepared for a missile attack by the Soviet Union following Sputnik. Truth be told, Sputnik was a major eye-opener for the United States and had major ramifications. Though Sputnik was little more than a metal sphere on a giant rocket, it had profound effects that can still be seen to this day, ranging from how we deal with foreign affairs to improvement and advancement of American science and technology. It changed our technology from detecting planes to systems such as the BMEWS that were designed for detecting ICBMs, and organizations such as DARPA were created out of the fear that the Soviets were surpassing the US. It caused panic and fear throughout the US and led many citizens to duck and cover in home fallout shelters. It's safe to say, Sputnik was a major turning point in American history.